So it's an absolute honor to have here with me today Jeremy Harmer. Jeremy, thank you very much.
It's lovely to see you, Vicky. It's
nice to see you as well. Today you and Steve Bingham gave an absolutely amazing show. The feedback was super, both online and offline. Can you tell us how you came up with this idea of incorporating poetry, literature with music?
Well, it all started because I'm an amateur musician. I play the viola in an orchestra. And when my orchestra appointed a professional leader, that's the number one violin, they appointed Steve. And of course what happens with the orchestras, amateur orchestras, is that the most important part is that when you finish rehearsal you go to the pub. So you go to the pub and we chat to people, and I started talking to Steve and got to know him, and we got on enormously well, and I admire his music so much. And I told him a bit about what I did, and we just started the idea of maybe we could do something together. Well, I can't do much music with him because I'm not good enough, but I can do words. And so we wondered if we could do a poetry and music show. And so I said, well, I'll hunt out some poems. And I chose the topic of love because there are more poems about love than almost anything else. And we didn't know if anything was going to work, but on one particular day he came to my flat with his violin and his computer and his electric violin. And I would read him a poem and he'd play something, or he played something and I read a poem. And at first it was sort of okay, and then suddenly with one particular poem, the music and the words went together like this, and we were just, we were overwhelmed. It was absolutely fantastic. And that gave us the spurt to sort of try again. And so we built up this poetry and music show, which it's amazing. And this sounds immodest, but the show it's just because the words and the music kind of,
they blend together.
They play with each other, and and the music sort of alters the meaning of the words, and the words kind of it's just amazing. And then that led on to the British Council commissioning us to do a show about Charles Dickens last year. I now do quite a lot of narrating with Steve's quartet, and also Steve conducts an orchestra, and so I do narrating work with that. And on June the 12th this year, Steve's string quartet and myself are doing a show for the British Council to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the publication of Pride and Prejudice.
Oh wow!
So that's going to be fun. So this is just a kind of whole new area of my life, and I love doing it. But partly because working with Steve is a joy. He's a very close friend, but he's also an extraordinary musician.
Do people, your audiences or the classes you take this project into, do they ever recommend a piece for you? Do they say, for example, can you do that poem next time? Or
do you know, not really. There's something, but no, no, not really. People just kind of, and we've done it to a lot of English language teachers. We've done it in the UK a lot, but we've also taken our show to Romania and to Mexico, and we were in Israel and things like that. But we also do it for UK audiences, ordinary UK audiences, which was not an answer to your question. But no, people don't really. They just kind of like it. And there are one or two sort of favourites in our show. There's an Elizabeth Barrett Browning poem where she says, "How do I love thee? Let me count the ways," and people love that. But no, it's such good fun to do. Is all I can say.
Oh, great, super. And let's move on to your presentation today, which is on correction.
That's right.
Can you give us a little bit of insight into it?
Of course. In JJ's talk that we've just heard, he mentioned correction and correcting in the right kind of way. And the really interesting thing about correction is people are a bit unsure about whether it works or not, whether it has any effect. Some people are very negative about correcting. Other people... Well, all of us, I suppose, on teacher training courses, we teach people you can do it this way or that way or the other way. But there's some doubt about whether it works. Other people, I'll quote some articles, other people say, for example, when teachers correct written work, their students' written work, they're frequently guessing because they don't actually know what the student was trying to say. And if you don't know what the student's trying to say, you can't correct the mistake sufficiently. Other people, there's a wonderful transcript I'll quote today by a man called Kumrava Devilu, and he's got this wonderful transcript in a lesson where the teacher's trying to correct because he knows something's wrong or she knows something wrong, but she doesn't really know what it is. And so her correction is a bit of a mess. And then the last thing on this is one thing that teachers do say a lot is teachers spend the whole time saying, very good, very good. And the moment you say very good, you finish the interaction. It just cuts everything stone dead. Mm-hmm. So something isn't quite right. But if you look at the whole issue of giving feedback on anything that students say, and if you think about using anything students say as a way of pushing them further, mm-hmm. Then life becomes more interesting. There's an article by Wong and Waring that I quote, and they've got this lovely idea. They say, when a student says something, you pursue them. You ask them pursuit questions. You kind of force them to go further. Pursue them. They say that one of the things that teachers can do which really gets students' brains working is to problematize everything. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's right? Is that the right way to say it? Could you say it a different way? You're doing feedback. You're giving it's not a question of no, which is what we often mean by correction. So in a nutshell, what I want to look at is ways of making feedback not just an issue of correction, but a way of provoking, pursuing students, making them think more and go further.
Oh, great. So is that your piece of advice to teachers listening to us right now, as far as correction is concerned?
Somehow or other, we have to find a way, when a student says something, I'm now being very bad in answering your question.
No
when a student says something, and if it's not quite clear or not quite right, you have to make, as the teacher, you have to make all sorts of judgments on the instant. Number one judgment, was that a mistake? Number two judgment, what kind of a mistake was it? Number three judgment, should I correct it or leave it? Number four judgment, who should correct it if it's going to be corrected? Number five, and all these sort of things rush into your head. And the result, as far as I can see, is that teachers are very good at correcting some things. We can all correct the third person S on the present simple. Of course we can. But we're not that good on correcting other things. Because those decisions, trying to make them on the instant, it's really quite something. So, but if we were to think about it in a different way, and instead of having an instant correction, saying, okay, now what do you mean to say? How can you say it another way? If you just kind of push and pursue and give feedback rather than correction, I think maybe the whole interaction becomes more interesting. That's what I think.
That's fantastic. Thank you very, very much for this interview, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
And thank you very much for interviewing me. It's lovely to talk to you, and see you in the conference.
Great, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicky.